1901, 2026. It's the fourth year and day, 330, since the full-scale invasion began. Welcome. For the Daily Situation Report, in today's report we see the development of ground-based drones. We also see what the Ukrainian paratrooper brigade says about the battle in the north of Pokrovsk. And what we also see are the effects of drones, and from people who absolutely have nothing better to do than to get themselves into really bad situations, and much more like that. First, let's see today's Ukraine live update. According to the authorities in Kharkiv, the city was hit this morning by a combined attack of unguided rockets from rocket artillery systems paired with some ballistic missiles. PET is currently on site and was even able to witness the Russian airstrike. Let's take a quick look at the update.
So, I'm currently in Kharkiv, and I was just informed that 2 rockets have already hit the city and more are on the way. One seems to have hit over there. This is honestly the closest I've ever been. I'm not going to keep driving now, there's no global positioning system signal anyway. And I didn't notice anything except for the air raid siren. And now someone here on site has informed me, so I'll tell you what I know now. So, there have been 2 rocket strikes so far. Someone here on site informed me. I was just shopping and what I just filmed is about 300-400 meters away from me. I'm at the edge of the city area and there's definitely something going on there. I don't know for sure, but I sent the video to someone and they said yes, that's most likely an impact. It's still burning, so I'm looking over there. You can see the smoke rising. I don't want to film outside right now since the police are next to me. You just heard an impact. That was the 3rd one I've heard now. I hope you were able to hear it. Alright, we're already sending the ambulances there. As I said, I'm not going that way. As I mentioned, you heard the impact in the other video. Now I'm just waiting since there's nothing I can do. I also don't have a global positioning system signal or know my exact location. None of this helps.
So while cities continue to be bombed, 2 Russian soldiers were tied naked to trees within their unit and left in the snow in winter temperatures. The full video is on my Telegram channel. Both were clearly hypothermic and shivering. The reason given was that it was a disciplinary measure because the individuals had consumed their superior's cannabis without permission. The incident is being portrayed internally as an educational measure and justified by the claim of maintaining a strict but professional army. This highlights issues with leadership, legal enforcement, and internal order in Russian units. Still, I'm a fan of the carrot and stick approach myself, and above all, when comrades steal from each other, that's always a bad thing. And in this case, it's their own fault, because who comes up with such a stupid idea? But this kind of punishment doesn't exactly motivate you to keep obeying either. Leadership and obedience, all of that comes from respect, not from fear. If I have a really good superior, maybe a very charismatic one, or someone you know really knows what he's doing, I respect him a lot, especially because he treats his people well. I would never steal from him. And someone who punishes his own subordinates harshly when they make a mistake, they won't regain their respect for him. They will just be afraid. And leading through fear is not the best way, especially when it comes to the motivation and morale of the soldiers. Take a look here. A Ukrainian drone spots and destroys a Russian ground drone. But what is it carrying with it? At first, I thought it was a launch platform or launchers for unguided rockets or small mortar shells. However, what speaks against that is that the underside of these modules is not open downward, but instead points directly at the unmanned ground vehicle itself. A launch would have basically damaged or destroyed the vehicle itself due to the backblast, which of course makes that interpretation unlikely. But when you look at the background more closely, the construction rather points to electronic equipment. These are likely electronic warfare components, such as jammers to disrupt Ukrainian drones or radio communications, or it could also be a relay system to enhance communication between Russian units, or even to increase the range of drones. Like a kind of repeater. You basically drive it far away between the target and your own positions, and this way you can enable drones to advance further, to fly farther, since the connection remains stable, as long as they aren't fiber optic drones, of course. What's noticeable is the presence of several additional batteries on board, which suggests a high energy demand. This indicates the ground drone served as a mobile jammer or relay for unmanned systems. But let's focus on unmanned ground vehicles for now. We're seeing a major development here, and we're also seeing more and more of them, especially on the Russian side. Russian soldiers of the 3rd Motorized Rifle Division have equipped 2 UGVs with a 12.7mm cannon and attacked positions of Ukrainian soldiers. That's already quite something. It's interesting to see a flying reconnaissance drone guide ground drone operators, showing them enemy positions and attack strategies. And then they start shooting at the soldiers inside. And what can you really do in this situation if you're on the other side? The UGVs have a low profile and heavy armament, even if you manage to hit them. So if you actually dared to stick your head out and not get hit, the armor could easily deflect small caliber weapons. And if you don't have drones yourself, it's hard to fight them. You'd basically have to bypass them, which is also difficult. After all, there's a drone in the sky. It observes everything and can immediately report such movements. And personally, I still find it a bit harder to fight against something like that than against soldiers. Ukrainian paratroopers from the 7th Corps report about 370 Russian soldiers killed or wounded in the Pokrovsk area last week, with the 76th especially impacted. The Russian Airborne Division, reportedly hit hard by Ukrainian sources, plans to bring in reinforcements by month's end. Let's look at the map. We can see the 76th. Airborne Division, as we discussed, and above are 7th Corps units like the 79th. Airborne Brigade and the 25th. Airborne Brigade on the Ukrainian side, as well as some other units that haven't been marked. We also see that while Ukrainians claim to have inflicted heavy losses, there's another example from Russia. By the way, this is the place where we saw on New Year's Eve how Ukrainian soldiers of the 79th Brigade, as far as I remember, lit a battery of fireworks, basically for the New Year's celebration. And this area here is now secured under Russian control. Ukrainian forces are still holding positions in the Myrnarad area, which is over here on this side. As a result, a Russian buildup of forces in the northeast of Pokrovsk has so far been prevented, according to the 7th Corps. But what I see at Myrnarad is a different situation. For me, Myrnarad is an orange zone. Even the gray zones look yellow-orange to me, which makes the situation seem even more dramatic. I haven't received any glycosylation here for a very, very long time, almost 2 weeks now. The last ones were just after New Year's. I can hardly say where Ukrainian and Russian units are currently located in here. Almost nothing remains of the town, and I assume that the Russians have almost completely occupied Myrnarad here, and the Ukrainians are mainly only somewhere here, between the front lines. So the situation indicates that there are still ongoing intense battles, with Russia trying to compensate for losses by bringing in new units, but so far without achieving an operational breakthrough. Because the breakthrough they want to achieve is supposed to happen here. Here, the Russians attack over this road 7 to 8 times every day and try to reach this place, in order to gain a small advantage far away from Pokrovsk. But it seems that the Russian recruitment and supply rate is about as high as the losses at the front. They're basically not building up, but rather not making any progress in terms of manpower. Simply put, you need twice as many soldiers for a breakthrough. Otherwise, progress will stall or be minimal. And now they're only getting enough soldiers to offset their losses to 0. Russia has 3 options here. Either mobilize, which is extremely unpopular and will probably only be done as a last resort, or they try to reinforce another section of the front and loosen things up here a bit, since the forces are far too concentrated here and there's overcrowding. Or the last option, they abandon other sections of the front to reinforce here, but risk losing control elsewhere and suffering heavy losses here again. First-person view drones now make it possible to completely check even heavily destroyed and confusing areas for enemy presence without endangering your own personnel. Of course, in the footage shown, a drone flies into a destroyed hangar that at first appears empty. Corners, niches, and red angles are methodically searched until a lone soldier is found hiding under a trailer. The battlefield has changed a lot. Hiding alone no longer offers much protection. Rooms that previously could only be checked by infantry and with corresponding risk can now be checked from a greater distance and without any risk at all. But you already know that. But first-person view drones, and this must of course also be mentioned, thus function not only as offensive weapons, but increasingly as precise reconnaissance tools at short range which can also defend themselves. And as always, we see that as an ordinary soldier, you have almost no chance. Almost every video from a reconnaissance drone shows a soldier being killed or severely wounded. We rarely see soldiers who successfully defended themselves. For this soldier, the war ended here. Who he was, what he did in this war, what brought him there, and whom he had to leave behind for it, we will never know. But he becomes part of a statistic where he, among the masses, will no longer stand out, unlike here. Ukrainian drones struck 2 S-2 anti-aircraft tank systems in a hangar. That will be costly. And if we think about how many systems have already been lost and what the current coverage at the front is, then this is a much more significant hit. Here it is again. This is a Russian S-400 radar that was hit here while on the move. With the S-400 anti-aircraft system, the radar is essential for the operation of these systems. It's a much higher value target than the launcher itself. You know what's truly problematic? Actions like this. A United States citizen was arrested after a stopover in the Russian Black Sea city of Sochi and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The man is Charles Wayne Zimmerman, who was on a round-the-world sailing trip. His journey took him from the United States via Portugal and Majorca before he said he contacted a Russian woman over the internet and then docked in Sochi. Russian authorities stated that illegal firearms were found in his possession. That could actually be true, so I wouldn't assume that it's not. The verdict is final, and Zimmerman has started his prison sentence. The case fits into a familiar pattern. Western citizens travel to Russia without a compelling reason. He was more or less lured by a siren. You know those mythical creatures whose songs lured sailors to their deaths? He was enticed by a woman, arrested, and later used as a bargaining chip on questionable charges. In the past, such cases often ended in a prisoner exchange, where Russia got back high-ranking intelligence officers, significant cyber criminals, or key players in sanction evasion. They trade important people for those with nothing better to do. Thanks to all subscribers, channel members, and the Algo crew. Special thanks to Oberstleute, Reneke, Robert Siller, Dietrich, Freddie, and Mayor Hofer. Please subscribe, like, and comment. See you in the next report.